Chapter 9, Ancient Rome. Section 3, The Daily Life of Romans. In Roman society, the head of the family was the father, who had control over all the property and every member of the household. However, Roman society disapproved of a father punishing a family without good cause. So, you just can't be a father and start whacking people without a good cause. They will look down on you for that. Women ran the household and took care of the children, just like most societies. But unlike other ancient societies, women could inherit property and can run the family business when their husbands were away. Boys from wealthy families were sent to private schools, while daughters were taught household skills at home. Social classes changed into an upper, middle, and lower class. Now, we've talked about the upper, meaning the patricians, and the lower, meaning the plebeians. Well, that will kind of shift into an upper, middle, and lower class system. Slaves made up about a third of the population and oftentimes suffered cruel treatment. We kind of talked about how with more conquering lands that the Roman generals would bring these conquered peoples into Rome, which took the place of the lower classes when it came to jobs. But most of the population, or at least a third of the population, were slaves. Roman religious beliefs were influenced by two groups, the Etruscans, who was the group that was in the central part of the Italian peninsula, and the Greeks. The Romans adopted the Etruscans' idea of gods in human form, as you see in these pictures here, where they all look like humans, and they borrowed many of the Greek gods and adopted it into their own religious beliefs. So, for example, Zeus in Greece would be Jupiter in Rome. Poseidon in Greece would be Neptune in Rome. Here's a chart with all the main gods on it. You have Jupiter, the king of the gods, Juno, the queen of the gods, Neptune, god of the sea, Mars, god of war, Venus, goddess of love, Pluto, god of the underworld, Mercury, messenger of the gods, Diana, the goddess of the moon and hunting, Minerva, goddess of wisdom, Ceres, goddess of harvest, Vulcan, god of fire, Vesta, goddess of the hearth and home. Priests were government officials, and the emperor was the head of state. But Romans were expected to honor the gods in public ceremonies. Eventually, the emperor will be associated as a god. Rome had over 1 million people living in the city. That made it a very crowded, dirty, and noisy city. Much of the population was poor, and they lived in run-down buildings with no running water. Poor Romans had little to eat, but wealthy Romans lived a life of luxury. They ate all sorts of very exotic things, where the poor Romans would not have done so. Rome was, again, very dirty. They didn't have much of a trash system, so you basically threw your trash out into the street. So you can imagine the filth that was on the streets and possible diseases that might spread as a result of that filth, and how easy that the city of Rome could possibly catch on fire, because a lot of their poor rundown buildings are made of wood, and then you have all the trash outside, and you're using heat, like fires, to heat up your homes. Just, cause for trouble. Romans built sewer and plumbing systems to improve sanitation, and they had something called aqueducts. This is an aqueduct right here with all these arches right here. Aqueducts were artificial channels that carried fresh water from springs, streams, and lakes to town. So basically what you see here is there are these little canals on the flat parts up here that carried water from fresh water to the towns. The water you see here would probably come from one of these aqueducts bringing water to them. This is a public bath. Yes, they had public baths. Because you didn't really have the running water per se in your own home, so you came to a public bath to take your bath. And another main reason was to socialize with all your friends. So not only did you get clean and refreshing, but you also gossiped while you're doing so. Weird! Now, the government was fully realized that a lot of the poor people in town needed their morale boosted. So they oftentimes made entertainment free, or at least really low cost. And the government provided entertainment at large public arenas like the Colosseum, which you see the remains here, or the Circus Maximus. This is kind of what it looked like, what it would have looked like back then. In either case, you saw things like chariot races or gladiator fights. Gladiators were warriors who were sent out to kill other gladiators. Now, what you see here is the bottom of the Colosseum, and sometimes you could flood the bottom of the Colosseum, and you could have boat races inside the Colosseum as well. That is the end of section 3.